So good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope that you're not too cold and it's not too chilly. And I hope that you're glad it's Thursday and we're nearly at the end of another week closer to all being together again. So I'm Mark McSee and I'm the CEO and founder of a brand and marketing consultancy called Supersonic Inc. And it's my real pleasure today to be hosting the fourth in wage stream financial well-being webinar. So some interesting stuff we're going to dive into. We've got two of the biggest stars, I think, in hospitality and the ops and people side. So I'm really excited to find out more from them, and I hope that you are too. So to introduce my guests today, I've got Sue from JKS and I've got Tom from Swingers. So hello, did you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what's going on?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Sunaina, also known as Sue, from JKS Restaurants. Myself and my brothers, the J and K of JKS, set up JKS back in 2008. Pre-pandemic, we were 16 restaurants and had approximately 750 employees across the group. And my roles and responsibilities are a bit of everything, but sort of the ops side of things, the beverage side of things, and the people side of things.
Excellent. And we all know that ops are the true bosses anyway, right? Okay. And what about you, Tom? I've been so excited to meet you because the last human person I saw in real life, I think, was Matt at your side. So yeah, it's been Swingers that swung me into the pandemic.
Mm.
Oh, well, there you go. Nice pun there as well. So, yeah, my name's Tom. I'm Tom Mercer. I'm the people director at Swingers. Yeah, I mentioned to Matt, actually, Matt's one of the co-founders of Swingers. Swingers, in case you don't know, we have two sites in London. The first one was actually a pop-up in Shoreditch back in sort of 5-6 years ago. And we now have one by the Gherkin, central London, and one just off Oxford Circus. So, great sites, great locations. And yeah, a fantastic business. Obviously, last 12 months has challenged us, like it's challenged everybody. My role, I joined in January last year, so I had approximately 4 to 5 weeks before COVID and coronavirus world became my world. So I've never really actually seen Swingers in its full glory, which I can't wait to see later this year at some point. But yeah, we're still here, still standing, and I can't wait to get back to it later on in 2021.
Great. And I'm just so excited to speak to you both because two great brands, or one great brand and one great house of brands. I mean, the JKS stable's just knockout. So I was just trying to think about the pandemic and the hospitality industry, and obviously it's in everyone's mind and we've been living it and breathing it and ranting about it on Twitter and all these things. But if we go back to, the pandemic starting around March last year, almost a year ago, what were your priorities sort of going into that? And then how did those priorities change from a people and a financial well-being perspective? What happened? Sue, did you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So it felt like it was overnight that we just kind of went from, I wouldn't say operating full pelt, but the year started off well. We just opened a new site, Hoppers in King's Cross. Actually, it's exactly a year today that we opened that site. And we had just reopened Gymkhana, which had been closed due to a fire. And that happened sort of a similar time, actually the equivalent of next week last year. And so we were off to what felt like a good start. And I think sort of February, we weren't really feeling the effects of the pandemic yet at all. I guess it wasn't a pandemic at that stage. And so we had no clue what was to come. And then it was really at the beginning of March that we started to feel things, and then there were some alarm bells ringing. And it was, I think it was Monday the 16th or something, where Boris said to everybody, don't go to pubs and restaurants, but he didn't tell pubs and restaurants to close. And that was it. That was a nail in the coffin for us, really. The following day, we took the call just to shut everything down because it just wasn't sustainable for us to operate with the levels of business we had. and the operating costs that we have. And at that point, obviously, it wasn't clear at all as to what support there might be for staff. So we were already in, the wheels in motion of trying to figure out what it was that we could do to look after people. And for us, the priority very much at that stage was, with 750 employees, just communication to try and make sure that people were in the loop and up to date with, what was going on, what was, from our perspective, kind of giving summaries of where we felt things were, making sure that people were safe and secure and had somewhere to live, essentially. And then as soon as, as the information would keep coming out, it was, we would make sure that we were communicating it regularly and in as comprehensive a way as possible to make sure that people knew exactly what was happening, exactly what they were entitled to, and what it all meant for them, really.
Yeah. And then what was the sort of switch then, as you were starting to get into, March and April, and the situation was becoming a little bit clearer, what changed around those priorities and, thinking about looking after the staff in terms of, mental health, physical health, financial health, what was happening there?
So the first 8 weeks after shutting everything down, we didn't operate any sort of takeaway, delivery, or anything else. So our focus was very much on the staff side of things and starting to put, sort of develop what can we do, what can we still operate our delivery offerings, our takeaway offerings, and everything else. And the switch sort of really happened when it was, okay, if we are going to be reopening in some capacity, how do we make sure that everybody is safe and they feel comfortable enough coming to work if they're asking them to come and cook for deliveries, takeaways, etc. So it was very much around the safety and us focusing on putting the right measures in place in the workplace to make sure that people were safe and that there were safe working environments for them to be in. At the same time, of the 750 staff that we had, we're talking about a small percentage that were going to be working. So for the rest of them, it was very much yes, the mental well-being. We started to try and offer sessions and things like that on a weekly basis for people to attend sort of yoga sessions, be it just generally have drop-in chats with our HR team, etc. So it's very much trying to sort of make sure that people remained engaged, make sure they felt looked after, and that they weren't sort of just left out in the lurch because, there was, at that stage, we had no idea how long this was going to go on for. I mean, I remember the day that we had to announce to everybody that we were going to be shutting the restaurants. 12 weeks at that stage felt like a long time. We said, no, it won't be that long, will it? Surely it can't be. And here we are almost a year later.
Yeah, no, that's good. You did some great things, and the takeaway offerings that you've got off the ground are just incredible. So big, shout out to your staff for being so brilliant and bringing that all together. It's brilliant to see. And what about you, Tom? So obviously, sort of coming into the business and this all happening. What were your priorities as you were coming in, and then what sort of switched? As you got to know the situation a little bit better.
That's a good question. It feels like such a long time ago. I can't remember what my priorities were pre-COVID. I had big ideas, big plans, which are still on a list somewhere. But yeah, like I said before, very quickly they became usurped by almost day to day trying to understand what we need to do. Very, very similar to Sue's experience, really. That I was in the venue in the city on the 16th of March. That's sort of a date that we'll all remember, and we took the call. I remember about 6:30 that evening. I got a phone call to say, look, we're going to close. The venue was utterly deserted. We had the team in, but it was a skeleton team anyway. And I stuck around, and then at the end of the shift, we told the team we're going to close. We can't see a way to be able to stay open under these circumstances. At no point did we think, like you said, Sue, that we'd still be here at 12 months later. So that initial sort of 5-day, that week before the furlough announcement was chaotic. I'll be honest, because we didn't know what the next stage was going to look like. Really, it was about trying to preserve and make sure that we took the right decisions and save money, cut costs where we could, to make sure that we would still be here in the future. And then very quickly it became, from a people team perspective, the priority for the team was there was just so much uncertainty, and they were looking for guidance and looking for clarity. And if there was one period in my career where I really struggled to give clarity, and I don't mind admitting it, it was that those couple of weeks, because I like most people, I'd never heard of the word furlough before.
Yeah.
So let alone how to implement it, and then all the practical side of, well, actually, how do you process that? We were closing payroll that following week, and what do we do? People have got rent to pay, etc., etc., etc. So that first month or so was very much about trying to reassure the team, but primarily was around money, to ensure the team had got paid, and we were processing it correctly. As it became a little bit more apparent we were going to be shut for a longer period of time, we had to reduce the number of people who were remaining on at work, and that became settling into a rhythm, unfortunately, for many people, which was stay at home, there's nothing to do. And that's when it switched maybe away from understanding the financial payments and furlough to the engagement piece, the well-being piece. And we knew very early on, and it's no secret, that the biggest factor in looking after your team is talking to them and listening. It's not just about pushing information to the team and expecting that to do the job. You've got to also be prepared to make yourself available to listen to the answer. And if that's a phone call, that's an email, or that's a message on an app, or whatever it might be, we realized very quickly we were going to need to do a lot of that.
But that's not as easy as it sounds. That's not as, listening to people, actually taking the time to do that. And with you guys, you're far smarter than the average bears or average companies, the two of you. So, it's really showing that sort of best in class. And just sticking with you, Tom, what about supporting the financial well-being side of things? I know you had some experience of that, I believe, in some of your former roles. So how did you go about sort of convincing people, it was the right way to look after employees?
Yeah, I did. My previous role was with the Azuri Group, working at Coco de Mama, and back in April 19, we launched WageStream then as part of the launch of the fourth platform. So we launched the whole package, if you like, back then. So I'd had experience of WageStream then, and the launch and the rollout. And then in April last year, we launched the fourth Engage app, which opened up some more opportunity for us to integrate some more platforms. And I always had WageStream on my mind, and if I'm honest, I felt that's probably going to have to wait until we're open, and there's some worked hours going through the business. So it was always there, and fortunately for me, fortunately for the team, we were able to launch back end of 2020. It was interesting, actually. The pushback I got, it wasn't significant. It was more just the understanding the concept of WageStream. I think this whole concept of being able to get your pay before it's payday, that was how does that work? Surely that's going to cause problems. Surely that's going to be an administrative nightmare. We're going to have lots of people leaving, and they're going to owe us money, etc., etc., etc. So there was a bit of a leap of faith back in 19 when we launched at Coco, but it worked a dream. The payroll guys were probably the most skeptical of that, because it's sort of stepping into their world. But it worked, and it worked very, very well. So I was very confident that we would have the same experience with Swingers. So yeah, it was a little bit of arm twisting, but not much. People wanted to do it, and we wanted to be able to provide that service and that additional opportunity, I guess. So I describe it as this: you want to be able to have something. It's nice to have something and not need it, than need it and not have it. And I think that kind of sums up the way we've approached it quite nicely.
Yeah, and just thinking about all of your options that you had to do this, was there a big sort of hunt to say, it's maybe these options, or we stick with what we've got, or this was the best option. Why did you sort of plump for the fourth wage stream, opportunity?
With Swingers, you mean? This last time round? Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was. I'm aware of alternatives, and we had a look at those. I was heavily influenced by the fact that this wasn't the first time I would be working with WageStream, and I'd seen firsthand just how beneficial it can be. First up for the team, but also how simple the process is. And why spend 10 pages trying to understand something if there's an opportunity to do it in 1 page? It was simple, it was easy, and the support is absolutely there. And actually, I must say, it was easy. I thought it was easy when we launched at Coco, and it's even better and simpler now. So I really didn't have to do anything.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
Yeah, I'm really lazy, so it would work for me too, I think. So just going back to what I was asking Tom earlier on, when the realization was happening that financial well-being was a thing, and it was a good thing to do for your teams. When you came to adopt this, it's not a small decision when you've got such a big team. So what were you sort of looking for at that time, and why was it the right move? And any early sort of results or feedback would be good to know as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for us, given the number of brands and partners that we have in, and the complexities, I suppose, of our business, usually the adoption of any system is quite a process, because it's all very well me sort of turning around and saying, yes, this is something that works for us and at JKS, and I think we should put it across the board. But there are other stakeholders involved at our partner sites as well, who we need to have on board as well. And so usually the process of getting a system live is quite a lengthy one, because of the conversations that we have. We need to get sort of buy-in and everything else. But when it came to WageStream, I think that what was so straightforward, and I think Tom touched upon it as well, is the fact that there's very little that needs to change in terms of getting the system live. It's very straightforward. It doesn't need hours and days of people's time to develop and provide information and build a platform and everything else. As a lot of the time with new systems, that is the case. There was initially pushback from some of the head office teams saying, oh, well, this was, again, end of 2020, when we were still allowed to be open for a couple of weeks at least. And so, well, maybe now's not the time. But actually, it was coming up to Christmas. Us shutting down again was imminent. So I said, actually, you know what? We've just got to do it. It's the perfect time. And it was absolutely painless, which was the best part of it, because it was, everything's kind of taken care of. It's the communication to the team as well, which, from our side is so important anyway. And so we just wanted to make sure that was right. But WageStream kind of take care of that as well. And generally speaking, I think the team who have utilized it, I think initially it was a little bit, okay, is this okay? I mean, what's the catch sort of thing. But I think, our people team are really on board with it, and so sort of can provide all the information that people need, and they're really happy. They're really happy about it. And the fact that, obviously at the moment there's some more complexities with calculations and things because of furlough pay and everything else, but the system just takes care of all of that, and it makes it very straightforward. Yeah,
well, that's a strap line for the guys. What's the catch? So just looking through that, it's very dear to my heart in terms of internal communications, because it's a big part of brand and culture and things like that. How did you go about that? From a best practice sense, to get everyone engaged, because it's not always easy to A, even communicate to everyone, but B, make them do something, and actually, how did you exactly go around that, getting that across?
Well, it's something that over the past sort of 11 months that we've had to work very hard on, because when you are communicating with that number of people, and often it is a mass email that goes out or something like that, the engagement is not often very high. So we've learned that the hard way over the last 11 months. but now it's really important that we have people at each site who champion things and who sort of push forward so that they can sort of encourage their peers within the sites as well, and they can also answer any questions as well. So rather than that just coming from a sort of head office, a head office side, it's the people on site, your line managers, your peers, and everybody is sort of bought into it, and they're aware of the system from start to finish. So I think that's really important. So it feels, I suppose, was localized, so that it's not just this initiative that's coming from a head office sitting somewhere else that has no interaction or involvement in the site. We need to make sure that it's all everything and everyone is talking to each other.
Yeah, I mean, what about you, Tom? How did you go about getting that across to people? Did you run a sort of internal marketing campaign, or did you use just sort of, I hate the word, but cascade communications or something like that? How did you go about
that? A bit of everything, to be honest. We had launched the fourth Engage out earlier in the year. That's become the normal place to go to for the teams to get their comms, which is great. And from a two-way communication point of view, it's terrific. And we actually timed our launch to coincide with the second reopening in December. So we had a period pre that time, so a week or two of retraining to the team with any updated rules and regulations and all the rest of it. And within that, we did the training for the managers on WaveStream, so that we could brief them. But I hesitate to use the word training, because it's not so much training as it is educating and understanding what this sort of concept is and why it might be beneficial. Because it's not, you don't need to be trained to necessarily use. It's intuitive, right? It doesn't. You don't need to go on a course to be able to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
It's more understanding how the principle works and why it might be beneficial to the team, and at the same time not pushing people to necessarily use it, but to understand that there is this tool that's going to be available to them if they want to use it, or if they need to in the future. Because that was a couple of pushbacks and challenges I got from a couple of the teams who raised a concern. Well, are we creating a problem? What if someone gets to the end of the month and they've got no money? And I said, well, currently we pay people at the end of the month, and what's stopping them spending all of it on fantastic TV the first day they get paid? And we don't sort of question people about their spending habits on that. So there's got to be that trust. And so we went through the internal marketing in terms of posters on the app, cascade, to use that term, through the managers. And then on site, because we were in the venues in December, so we were there talking to the team and being available really to answer questions. And the comms that come through from WaveStream directly to the teams in inboxes is easy to understand. It's not overwhelming in any way. It's very much step by step. So it was up to them to take it up or not. I mean, it's their choice, right?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like these things are converging in a good way. Where you've got that sort of one platform, like a fourth engaging, and this is just a natural part of it, which is really handy. I wish it was around in my day, and what an hour price and all that. And then, so thinking about the current challenges, I mean, you were saying, it was super simple, a process to implement. I mean, it can't be as simple as just flicking a switch. What's entailed? How long did it take, just to get that in, just to talk about how easy it is, because I'm thinking it isn't just a switch flick. There must be a little bit more to it. So what did you have to do to get it implemented?
To be honest, to be honest, from my side, it's not literally a flick of the switch, but it's more about the communication to the team and choosing a date when you want to go live. And then there is a very detailed plan of when the first comms will go out to the teams directly from WaveStream with our message, our branding, etc., and WaveStreams as well. And then it follows through right the way through. I think it's a month after launch. There's the last sort of round of comms. So it is almost as simple as just choosing a date and then letting the process flow. And you do whatever. If WaveStream needs something from you, you do it on time, and away you go.
Nice. And also, Sue, you touched on it earlier, the furlough calculations. Now, being a pictures guy and crayons guy rather than a numbers guy. All that stuff makes my head hurt a little bit, in terms of the furlough and the calculation and the complications and all the rest of it. So, what sort of happened there around the furlough time? How much did you have to do and all the rest of it? Because it's a very complicated deal.
It's 100%. I'm trying to erase those days from my memory quite quickly because it was really tough because there was one thing being the furlough calculations and having to wanting to explain it and make sure people understood exactly what it was that they were entitled to, and also sort of when the scheme was originally announced, it wasn't clear as to whether or not, when people were paid trunk or service charge, if that's included in the calculations or not. So we were having to sort of plan for a number of different scenarios. And also, we wanted to do something a little bit more than that as well, where we could. So, for example, top some of the furlough pay up, and if people are working, how much can we kind of afford to pay them, and all kinds of different things. So we did try and create diagrams and flow charts and things like this, so to make it very clear for people that, okay, for March, this is what you're entitled to, this is what you'll get paid, this is what will show on your pay slip, this is how it's calculated and made up. Other questions such as what happens to our holidays and all kinds of different things. So from March till about September, we were doing these diagrams, and different for different sort of seniority within the business as well. But my God, was it a challenge? It was really, really tough to make sure that that everybody understood what we were trying to explain, because English is not the first language of most of our employees, and B, that it was right and it was in line with guidelines and actually what the calculations are meant to be, and a lot of that was we were figuring out and learning as we were going along anyway, and I think it took until about September for us to really understand what was going on. And for people to kind of stop asking questions. There was also the tricky thing is that because we were just opening and relaunching restaurants, there were certain people who weren't actually entitled to furlough as well because of their start dates, and things like that. So it's sort of like, okay, well, what happens then? So it was a lot of all-nighters, putting myself and my brother Joe sort of sitting up and trying to just decipher the whole thing and figure out how we're going to communicate it, because as soon as something was announced, the questions would start coming in almost immediately. So we needed to be really quick in terms of digesting it and then being able to communicate it back out in the best possible way. And
the system side of things, though, the fourth wage stream system that you have, that's taken care of a lot of that side of things now. You don't need to worry about that as much.
Yeah, exactly. So because like I said, we launched at the end of December, end of November, which by which stage we already had the kind of calculations and things like that in place. So we just had to provide wage stream with that information in terms of how we were calculating things and what people were entitled to, and they just kind of ran away with that. So we just provided them what we had already. We didn't have to do anything new, and it was from that they took and did what they had to do with the system and set up whatever needs to be set up. And there were a few tweaks here and there just because of the complexities of some of the way our staff are paid and things like that. But other than that, it was very painless. And then I think it was something like a 15-minute kind of training session, like a little webinar or whatever, and that was it. We were away. We were off.
Great. That's great. Just sort of thinking about, we've got the great relaunch, is going to be happening soon. We've never seen anything like this in our lifetimes, which is going to be great. The whole, sort of industry getting together. And as part of that, there's a lot of smart organizations, looking ahead, saying, we are going to survive, we are going to get, ahead. And with, the the financial side of things, some people are looking to get that in order as well. So, you know, are there any sort of recommendations as a client of, you know, Fourth and Wage Stream to be able to, you know, sort of pass on to them so it's even easier for them, you know, if they are looking at this as an option?
I think it's, you know, I think it's worth listening to the sort of demo of it to understand it a little bit better, just to get the ins and outs of it. But from my point of view, there's no additional work from our side. There's no additional cost from our side. There's, you know, all of those things which are particularly at a time like this that are concerns.
Yeah.
When, you know, we're very limited with resource because of restaurants being closed and people on furlough, and of course, you know, revenues and income being so down. These things that we usually would consider, they're just taken care of, and that it's taken away from you. So it was as close to saying it was a kind of a no-brainer, because, you know, the staff benefit from it. There's nothing additional from our side, so, you know, why not?
Yeah. And what you know, you get any sort of wise Yoda-like words for anyone that's wanting to step into the realms of, you know, financial well-being and looking after the staff a bit better?
Really very similar to Sue's comments. You know, it is such a simple process to do. I was certainly at the no-brainer stage of the decision making, because it benefits the team, it benefits us, because if it helps the team, it will benefit us straight away and in a long term into the future. I think there's a bigger piece for me as well around WageStream. I think there's a huge part of WageStream about the financial education for the teams that often gets overlooked. Certainly in my previous role, it was all about being able to get the money.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about the transaction, getting the cash. So you can then buy that thing that you unexpectedly needed to buy, or whatever the reason was. But there's a big part of WageStream that allows educating the team. And, you know, as you mentioned earlier, a huge portion of our workforce, our team, are not English first language. They're right now scattered sort of around the world, those on furlough, and equally often they need some help to understand some of these financial decisions perhaps that they need to make, and not everyone's going to get those decisions right. So being able to talk to, there's a chat function, there's lots of educational resource on there as well. So for me, that's a really important part of WageStream, and I think it's worth noting. I don't think my team have seen the benefit of that yet, because we're still very new in the world of using the platform. But in time, I'm confident that that will help our team, and there will be some people who will benefit hugely from having that resource. So for me, it's do it. If you're wondering whether to wait until you're open, my recommendation would be to do it now.
Yeah.
Because by the time you're getting into the last month before the month leading up to being able to reopen and then reopening, our worlds are going to be very busy, and this could be something you could, for want of a better phrase, tick off the list.
Yeah.
Get it done before.
It's going to be crazy, you know, that when we know, you know, it's going to be like that advert when everyone's running into the sea, you know, first choice holidays, whatever it is, you know, it's going to be like that. It's going to be a crazy time, and you won't have time for these, you know, wonderful things, you know. Best to do it now, definitely. There's a couple of things, a couple of questions came through. So just thinking about financial well-being as a phrase, and, you know, did it, do you think, come about, or do you think people started thinking about that because of the furlough situation? Do you think it made people think more about their staff and more about staff well-being when, you know, the dreaded F word happened?
Yeah, I think particularly when it was clear that actually furlough, when they say 80% of your normal earnings in hospitality is actually what you're contracted to, and a lot of the time that's not what you end up taking home at the end of the month because of service charge and everything else. So for a lot of people, it was significantly less than 80% of their normal salaries, and you know that would often take them below minimum wage, and you know it was really tricky, and you know a lot of people sort of looking at things like universal credit to make ends meet. So yeah, 100%. I think it did really make us want to see what we could do to assist. And you know, for those people who are going through really difficult times, we did what we could.
Yeah, no, that's good. And you know, it sounds like you've done a great job. Tom, what about you?
In terms of the financial well-being piece, or just employee well-being?
What was it, a eureka moment, you know, where you thought, or you thinking along those lines before, you know, what sort of happened there?
I wouldn't say it's I wouldn't say it's a eureka moment. I think it's always been there, but perhaps the platforms and tools that are available now have enabled it to get higher up the list in terms of priority. And I think it's also becoming more normal. And then more and more businesses are being able to offer something like WageStream or a version of. So you'll have more and more members of your team joining you, starting to expect something like this. So if they're not asking for it now, I think in due course, maybe over the next couple of years, there will be more and more people expecting this sort of offer, if you like. And you know, I think the only other point I wanted to just sort of touch on there, listen to Sue about the financial well-being is, and the furlough side of it, because the furlough it's as we all know, has been super complicated. But there's also a small group of people who have not been furloughed, and you know, it's important from an employee well-being piece just in general to ensure that they're not the forgotten as well. I know a lot of people would like to have the problem of working, and I understand that, but equally it's also important to make sure that they've got access to, whether it's financial well-being or whatever type of well-being or team welfare that you want to address. So I think the financial well-being sits just as neatly alongside emotional well-being, mental well-being, physical well-being, and it all is part of the same pot, with not one being more important than the other. I just think they all complement each other. So yeah, I think it's been there all along, but now we've got access, and the industry's got access to certain tools that can really give it some prominence and make it easy for people to resolve. Easier, I should say.
Okay, well, last thing then I was going to ask you, and I'm really dying to know this, was what's your one takeaway then, you know, talking about all this stuff, so personally and professionally from the pandemic experience, and that will hopefully take you through to recovery period. So a little bit of nosiness into your private life, and then a little bit of good stuff in your professional life. So it'd be good to start.
Tom, do you want to go ahead first?
Or? Yeah, I could go. Yeah, that's fine. I think from a personal perspective, I think a renewed appreciation of teachers. I always appreciated teachers, but having 3 kids in primary and secondary and 1 in GCSE year is difficult. My wife works in a school, so this lockdown is the worst period I've had, because she's actually at work while the 3 kids aren't. So that's proved challenging. And I'm actually really looking forward to getting back to some kind of office piece, because I don't think I realised just how much I enjoy being up in town and bouncing between venues and walking the pavement and talking to people. So that's a takeaway for me. I'm going to make the most of that opportunity when we've got it again. I think from a professional point of view, I think I knew this already, but it certainly reaffirmed my belief that every employee deserves time sort of invested in them for any reason. I think when you think about your team and use that word invest in your team, often it's a financial, it kind of triggers the pound sign, when in actual fact, a lot of what our team have appreciated the most from us is just a conversation, and it is a chat. And I appreciate some businesses are much bigger than ours, and so we've got maybe a bit of an advantage because we've got fewer people to have that conversation with. But making 10 minutes to speak to your team, whoever it is, for whatever reason, is invaluable for them as much as it is for us. So I'm going to make sure that we keep doing that.
Great. And what about you, Sue?
So I mean, I think first of all, it's never ever take anything for granted again, really, and that's from the smallest little things to, I mean, just seeing my son's face when he can't go and hug his grandparents, when he has to see them from a distance, is heartbreaking, you know. So I think, you know, you don't realize that the smallest of things, you know, for everybody that you wouldn't usually consider but you just take them for granted usually, and you take them away. And as Tom said as well, just the ability to pop out for lunch, because from working from home, and I think, you know, it does make a big difference to your state of mind, your sanity, your generally the way you approach things. And often, because of time saving from not commuting and things like that, sitting at a desk, you end up sort of filling up your time because you can, because I don't need to travel anywhere, so you go back to back to back to back. And I just think it's just not worth doing that. And so, you know, I, at least if I have a day full of calls, I try and do at least one of them walking around the block at least, so that you know, you have a little bit of clarity. But also from a professional side, similar to what Tom was saying, but also just, I don't think we ever realized before just the impact that you can have on people, and as an employer, just how much reliance there is on you, and it's really our responsibility to make sure that people feel secure and safe and looked after. You know, for me, it's really come to light, and this whole well-being piece, something that, you know, we've always tried to be on top of, but, you know, the last year has really made me realize that we weren't doing anywhere near enough. So, you know, now, particularly with everything coming out of the last 12 months, I think mental health is a really, really important thing. And, you know, for us, we've never had people reaching out to our people team more than they have been now, so saying, look, we're struggling, you know, in various capacities. And so, you know, to be there for them, to give them the time, like Tom said, to provide them with whatever support we can, and could that be, you know, we need to make sure that we can continue that on, and that's not just that, okay, this is forgotten about once we reopen the restaurants because everybody's back to normal sort of thing. You know, I think there is going to be a lasting impact of this, and, you know, we need to make sure that people still feel looked after, not that just because things are, business is as normal, we forget about everything that happened. I think it's really, really important that we continue everything that we've achieved in the last 12 months, even though it's not been what we thought we would achieve in the last 12 months.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap things up there. Thanks so much for being my guest today on the 4th Wage Stream Financial Wellbeing webinar, and I'll hand back to Georgie to say goodbye. Just stay safe, everyone, and thanks for joining us today.